want to thank you, Paulo, just for your framing of remarks on DEI. And it's actually a really great setup for the work that I'm leading around the win-win workplace. I'm actually going to go through just a couple of slides, just hopefully very briefly, just to give you a background. But one thing that we tried to tackle with the win-win workplace was this idea of quantifying these investments in inclusion. And so one is Dr. Angela Jackson. I'm a lecturer at Harvard University. I'm also the founder and director of Future Forward Institute. It's a labor market and research institute. And what we try to do is to prove out and quantify the business case for investing in inclusive practices that help people stay and connected to the world of work. And so I'm going to share just a few slides with you, and hopefully this works. Let's see here. Screen. Everyone can see my screen. Let's see here. Let's start here. Let's hopefully. Paul, you have to tell me, can you see my
Yes,
screen?
yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have been focusing a lot of my research lately in the lives of women and the world of work. And what we know, as this slide says, is that the world of work has not been working really well for a number of women. There's a few things that we've seen this year. In the first 6 months of this year, we had, over 200,000 women who left the workplace. And then when we think about 1 in 3 women are considering downshifting or leaving their jobs. And you've got 79% of women reporting that they don't feel cared for. And the reason why I have really keyed in more so recently on this research is because I feel like women are the canaries in the coal mine. And by that I mean the barriers that women are feeling at work are many times felt by many other people who additionally have barriers to work. And so in my research, I've looked at over 1,700 companies, and these are everything from Fortune 500 companies to private equity backed companies to small and medium sized companies. And really, what I got curious about are what are the practices that these companies are employing to ensure that people actually feel included? And then, out of curiosity, which of these practices and strategies are also showing a lift on the bottom line, on the business impact? And the reason why we're looking at that business impact is exactly what you just said, Paulo, is that for many times we talk about inclusion as it's a nice to have or it's a moral imperative. What we wanted to see with our research team at Future Forward Institute is if we could prove out the business imperative in doing this work. And so, what I'll do here is for those of you who are watching, if you could just load up and we'll see if my Slido works. If you could just take a minute and pull out your phone and do the QR code. I am curious to hear from you all. What is the number one workplace challenge that we are facing today that you are seeing in the world of work? And we'll just give you a couple of minutes to bring that on screen. And so again, if you go to Slido, what's the number one workplace challenge that we are facing? I've been on this book tour for the Win-Win Workplace, the book that I released earlier this year in March of this year, and I've been asking this question just so we're getting a finger on the pulse of literally what is happening in the world of work real time today. What are we facing today in the world of work? So here's some of the feedback we're giving. Disengagement, supervisor stress. This is a big one, and I talk about this in the book about, our frontline managers. Synthesis of knowledge, disengagement. You see that that's coming out really, really big. Shifting regulatory environments, uncertainty, recognizing actual value of employees, inconsiderate colleagues. Yeah. As this is coming out, disengagement, burnout. One thing that I'm hearing from you that I'm seeing as I do this presentation, I was just in Chicago yesterday with 100 frontline healthcare workers. These themes around burnout, disengagement, poor communication, these are echoing across workplaces throughout this country and literally around the world. And the reason why I bring this to date, and I know your answers are still going to be coming in as I move to another slide, is what we're finding is that these problems have moved from it just being a problem of the employees to actually seeing it being a problem for the employers. And employers are reporting at record numbers how these issues, these challenges that typically are individual challenges, are now being affecting the bottom line of the business. So please keep putting those in there. And Paulo, I'm going to share a screenshot after this that we can share with everyone that's tuning in.
Excellent.
So, one thing I want to talk about is the emphasis behind this book, The Win-Win Workplace. The challenges that you put on the previous screens are the ones that we've seen. I spent over a decade going to workplaces trying to really drill down and find out what actually policies and practices at the workplace level enable people to have sustained careers in the future of work. And what we're able to distill down after looking at 1,700 workplaces were 9 pillars and 9 strategies that we saw over and over again in workplaces that where people are actually thriving, and so were the bottom line. And we've distilled those into 9 pillars, which I'll go over with you now. What we saw with these kind of employer-centered win-win workplaces is that one, it was good for the employees, but also it had a tangible impact on the business. So these win-win workplaces had 39% more assets on average than their peers. They had higher profits and they had higher revenue. So the 9 pillars are really one around centering employee voices. So going beyond just checkbox surveys and annual performance reviews, but actually making listening on a regular basis, it's part and parcel of what they do in their companies. These are companies that are doing pulse surveys. They're keeping their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the workplace. They're thinking about relationships and how do they reduce the felt experience of hierarchies in the workplace. They're thinking about intersectional inclusion strategies. So, thinking about every employee is coming to work every day with challenges and opportunities. How are we surfacing what those look like on behalf of like having better outcomes for the business? How are we thinking about reimagining benefits? I tell many employers in C-suite, free lunch was great many years ago, but like today, we've got a 5 generational workplace. People are caring for their children and also elderly parents. And so, what are the benefits that people need today? Really thinking about how we are supporting those supervisors, those frontline managers, and moving them from managers to actual leaders. And thinking about how are we hiring differently, hiring for stars. This is the work of opportunity at work, making sure that we can do that skills first hiring and that we actually have the processes in place to screen people in versus screening them out. And then thinking about how we're developing a deep talent bench so that when we saw these win-win workplaces, they had clear career progressions that people could start at entry levels and they could see their pathways into senior management. And then they were beginning to really report on this. Many of these win-win workplaces, they were very clear about being transparent about how they were treating their people, not only reporting that internally to employees, but also reporting that to other stakeholders. So thinking their board of directors, thinking also their customers, making clear that they are what we call a win-win workplace. And then the last thing that we saw in these win-win workplaces is what we call distributed leadership or an ownership mindset. We saw that when these strategies were in place, when we went in and talked to actual employees, they talked about how they felt invested in their workplaces, how they felt engaged, right? How they saw value even when times were hard. And that's why we saw these benefits and this return on the ROI. So what I'd love to hear from you is, and you can join here, is which of these 9 pillars feels most urgent in the workplaces that you're seeing today? If you can go on your screen again and pull those up, what we can do is walk through, and I'd love to just end with a couple of case studies, and then we can open it up for questions and some conversation. So if you join Slido again, which of these pillars feels most urgent in the workplaces that you are looking at? Okay, distributed leadership. I like this. Let's see here. Centering employee voices. And then Paulo, I don't know, we haven't talked about this, but I don't know if we can have a couple people come off mute, or is that going to be a bit more difficult?
It's going to be slightly tricky because we're running the webinar, but what we can
Okay,
do
well
is that
then we won't do that. I usually at this point in the juncture, I love to invite voices in because for me as an adaptive researcher, while I do the research, I really like to tie it into what's happening real time in workplaces, and I think this is such an amazing community to have people tapped in from around the world, giving their feedback. So distributed leadership is a big one. I think that's coming up for number 9. What I'd love to do now, Paulo, if you just play with me just a little bit, I would love to hear what you're seeing and how this might align with your research.
no, this is exciting, and this is actually why I wanted to have it on here. And yeah, let's take another 5 minutes or so. And I apologize, we had that little mishap at the beginning, but this is one of the reasons why I've been so excited to talk to you, is because this is so in line with what we see. We basically see pretty much everything that you're talking about here. We come at it from a very different angle, which is about asking people to share their experiences in the workplace. But it's very clear once you read the experiences and you understand what is actually causing these experiences, which then lead to people not feeling that they belong, people not feeling that they're included, people not feeling that they're aligned with the company. And we see a lot of the same kinds of issues that you're talking about here. So I think it's really well aligned. I would say the one thing that when you talk about activating a frontline leader, I think activating leaders in general. So you have, your pillar 9 and your pillar 5, which are kind of both talking about leadership, but from slightly different angles. I think we see over and over and over again the importance of leadership, really understanding why this is so important, and it's not just a nice to have. And that's one of the reasons why we come at it from that angle, which is to try to explain to them, this is not just about being nice to your employees, this is about your bottom line, it's about being successful.
That's
So
exactly that's exactly it. I want to just give an invitation to everyone that's watching. I'm just sharing this last slide that I have here. Um, I'd love to, I know we ran short on time here, but I'd love to just stay connected to everyone. What we call this is joining the coalition of the willing. Anyone who's listening today, my offer to you is if you link in with me and you let me know that you attended this webinar, I'd love to send you a free audio copy of the Win-Win Workplace book. I'd also would love for you, we're having a Win-Win Workplace Summit in May 2026 in Chicago, which I'd love to be in touch with you about. But again, send me your information. I'd love to share more about the research we're doing and also hear about what you're seeing in your workplaces, in your context. We're building on this work. This was just a start, and communities like this is where we feel like we can really champion and get the word out about these practices, but also the business case behind them. So, Paulo, I just want to thank you again for having me.